loud. Beautiful. And we are recording, and Anne, I'm just going to make you a co-host just in case I get dumped because of my internet connection. So yes, that way it should keep recording and I would just jump back in and you'd have to let me back in.
I can let you in. I think I know how to do that. Yeah.
All right, Herb, I think you can go ahead, get going. Ready to roll.
Okay, I'll call the Wellington Board of Education Policy Committee together on June 4th, 1 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting. And the agenda for today is call of order and a review of policy regulation 1330, use of school facilities, and a new policy 2134, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and adjournment. And that is the content. And I believe, Phil, you emailed us the copies of the review regulations and a new policy. Which one would you like to have first?
So you have two things. We emailed out, and I have it on screen right now too. So we have the board approves policy, and that's this right here. So 1330A is the policy. And then we also sent out the regs, which is typically not approved by the board. It's just how a superintendent would make your policy go into effect. And so that's where you see the regulations. So going through this policy, and I have reached out to other superintendents and other districts, and I've also reached out to CHC. And interestingly enough, nobody has a specific policy around a school-based health clinic. What they do is they adjust their use of facilities policy to just allow it meets the criteria that they need to have the agency in. And then within their specific contract, which is what the negotiation team, I think it's negotiations group, has been working on, the details are in there. But obviously within the policy, it has to allow it. I will be honest with you and tell you, I don't see anything in the policy that stops them, that you would have to change. I do see something in the regs that you would have to change. So if we're just going through this real quick of what's here, the board can permit use of facilities for nonprofit educational, whether or not school is in session. You have the ability to do that. So just like always, someone applies to use the building, it goes through an interior process, meaning it goes to the school first. The principal can sign off on it or not, and then it comes to my office, and I can either approve it or deny it. And so basically what happens with this is they have to meet all of these regulations. And so, obviously we have to meet school policy for the board. There's got to be a contract in place, which there always is. And there would obviously be an additional contract in this situation because it's longer term. It just talks about, who's responsible. Sorry.
Bill, does that policy, I don't have a copy of the policy. I have the regulations, but in the policy, does it state that the group, and I assume is a school-based behavioral health service, would use the facilities when the school is in session, but when we are not in session, it will not be present in the building?
So all of that is still under the way your policy is written. Is it's up to me. So put recreation in this situation. If recreation wants to use the facility, they have to go through an approval process, and there's not necessarily a requirement for our staff to be there. If the building is closed, it says there's certain days that they can't be there, and it's not in this, it's in the regulation. And so I think that's where we really want to spend our time, is how the regulation is written, because your policy, and it's aligned with Connecticut statute, is that the board can permit the use of school facilities for nonprofit, whether school's in session or not. You have the ability to do that. And you can say, yes, you can use it, or no, you can't. And you have that right. So, but in the regulation, Herb, that's where it dictates what the specific requirements are. So recreation, and I think I don't know if it just applies to recreation. We'll click on it in a second. But it says you can't use it on a holiday. That's clearly written into the regulation. So that's where we want to make sure it's specific.
This organization is classified as non-profit.
Correct.
They have to make a profit to operate, but they are classified as non-profit.
Right. They are a nonprofit.
They have to make money to pay the rent and pay salaries and all kinds of expenses that they're required under a nonprofit. And
Yep.
they have to have a reserve figure too. So it's a money-making machine.
Well, but they still have to operate under the nonprofit requirement, which we don't get to decide whether they have that status or not. And they have nonprofit status. So
Right.
what the board has to determine is, what is if you're going to allow them in, what are the expectations? A lot of that is already in the contract, which I just got a new draft back. We're going to schedule another meeting for that group. But the majority, I think almost actually all of the edits that were requested by us, by the negotiations team, have been accepted by them. And so I think it's going to be at a spot where it's going to be coming to the board to be approved, not this next meeting, because we're not quite ready for that.
Yeah.
But your general policy here just talks about, look, at the board has the right, and you do that through me, to either provide permission or not provide permission. Talks about whether, if I close the facilities, they don't get to come in, that they have to have proper liability insurance, which they do. And Kerma has recommended that we're named on their policy, because they have to hold their own insurance, where we would be named on their policy. I've already talked to them about that. And that there's appropriate crowd control for events. This really doesn't apply because it's a typical school day. And that, this is the last thing, suitable facilities without charge during community emergency or civil defense. So
I'm sorry.
think, yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's unclear for me. As I understand, as Herb just made a point, that they are not non-profit organizations.
No, they are nonprofit. They are
officially, does it say somewhere in the document that they're non-profit? Means they make no profits from that? That's what I don't understand. They work from insurance, they charge insurance. How can they go as non-profit when this is a business? I just want to understand.
I mean, all I can tell you is, from a policy perspective, they are identified as a nonprofit organization, and that's what this says.
Where are they identified? On their bylaws somewhere? Where?
Oh no, you have to have legal status to be identified as a nonprofit agency.
So do they have a proof that they have that legal status?
I mean, I can get that, and I know they are listed as a nonprofit. You're just asking for proof that they're a nonprofit.
Yes, please. At least, obviously you can do it now, but for the meeting, when we consider this question, I would really like to have an original proof that they are listed officially as nonprofit.
Yep. So again, I'm not sure, and I looked at other policies, other districts. They have very general, just like we do, overview of a use of facilities policy. Where it gets into the specifics is the regulation. And so this is what you typically do not approve. This is where you would give this to the superintendent and say, hey, we want to make sure that this, whatever we have in there, meets the policy and how it's implemented. Okay. So if we're looking at the regs, the first thing here that I see, this right here is a requirement. We know that this is eligible only for our students. And it also says that in our contract. And so that was one thing I looked at, and it would still meet that. The big item that jumped out at me is number 17, use of school premises. And again, this comes back to the statement is the following restrictions shall apply to the use of school facilities.
Will
And
you
this is
put
why
it on are you gonna put it on the screen for us? I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, you don't see it?
We don't see it.
Well, that's weird. Let me try that again.
Bill, I saw it. Can you make it a tad bigger though? I'm sorry.
Okay, now we see it.
Okay.
Shirley, you working off the regulations now?
Yes. Zoom. Let me see if this will help.
Okay, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so yes, Herb, this is the regulation. In number, it says again, the following restrictions shall apply to the use of school facilities. And this is the item that you have to be able to adjust. The use of school premises for non-school activities is not permitted during school hours. So I would argue this is a school activity, but we don't want to leave that as chance because we're saying we're allowing that to be, it's a separate agency. So you might want to have a statement in there to state, this does not include the school behavioral health clinic. That was the first point. And then the second point would be around this, would be fees. The following users sanctioned by the board, and this is what's in their contract, shall not be charged a rental or custodial fee if facility use directly follows the regularly scheduled day. Even though this directly follows the regular scheduled day, we might want to put an additional statement in here that says exactly what is in our contract with CHC. And that says that we will provide a space, a phone line. It's very specific in the contract. And what we have specifically in the contract, in my opinion, should be exactly what we should have in the reg.
So you're suggesting that we change number 17, where it says use of school premises for non-school activities are not permitted and simply insert school-based behavioral health services in there somewhere. So we approve this, we violated our policy, but we're correcting the policy now to accommodate them. Which I had a question mark, and I think that we have to do that. Make that.
Yeah, I think it's just where it makes it clear, because someone could say, is that a school activity or is it a non-school activity? And I would just put a statement in here, and if I was doing this, I'm just going to put in parentheses so we know what I'm writing. This statement does not apply to the school-based
behavioral health.
Yeah.
Service.
Yep. Something of this sort. Or you could reverse it and say, they're allowed during the day. But again, we could go back through each of these if you wanted. I just wasn't sure how you wanted to attack it. That's going through the policy for me. Those are the two items in the regulation that where I saw to be adjusted.
Yeah. Can we go through the restrictions one by one, see if we have a question on them?
Absolutely. So they have to do this. They're going to do an application. And we would have a contract in addition to that, which is on top of what everybody else does. So when someone says, we have our own Board of Ed contract, just to use a facilities form, they will complete that. They will also complete their contract that we have worked on with them. This is my determination. I get to decide whether they get to be in the building or not because of weather. If there's any weather that day, then there's no services provided if I close the building. They can't use it on legal holidays. It's not permitted per our policy, and I think that's correct. Should not be in there.
How about summer months?
Even any legal holiday, they're not permitted to be there.
How about during the summer?
Any legal holiday that's a legal holiday, they cannot be there from January 1 to December 31st. And if there are times where our buildings are closed, and they would be required to follow this.
So you mean Herb means summer vacation?
If it's not a legal holiday and we wanted to have them in, we could allow them to be in there. But we'll be able to tell them during summer break, the building is accessible from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or, the building's not accessible on Fridays. We would work with them on those details. That's not in the specific policy, though.
All these things would be at the discretion of the superintendent.
That is correct.
According to these regs, the board would not have any influence after the regulations and the policy is approved, except what's in there.
Right, and you typically.
But can I ask a question again, Phil?
Yeah.
I can understand the holidays and all that, but the summer months when we close down, we have summer school sometimes, but if it's closed, are they going to be there during the summer?
So my understanding is they will still provide summer services to our students, but it's more on a limited basis, and not everyone has access to that, depending on their need, the need of the student. And we would want them to service.
If they're performing a service, which they will be doing, they'll do that on the regular days when they're allowed during the school year. But certainly with the type of student that they'll be dealing with, it may carry over into the summer. I mean, they'll require services, health services, behavioral services during those summer months as well as the rest of the year. It's a year-round proposition for them.
Correct.
And it would be up to the parents to deliver the child to and from school for the appointment.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
So the hall and center school basically will be open during the summertime.
Well, I mean, they're open now. We allow our staff to access the buildings. We're cleaning them, and our cleaning crew works around summer school. They would work around those spaces too. But this is not something where you're going to see that space used from every day from 7 to 3. But we would, we would work with them on those things. We allow our custodians to work 10-hour days for 4 days because so they can, not have to worry about the heat on a 5th day of the week, and they still get their hours in and they clean the building. So that's where you work with people. And if we tell them, look, if I make a decision that the buildings are closed on Friday, they can't come in.
And if we have a pandemic issue, they would have to adhere to it. That's
Absolutely.
Not the regs, but I assume that would be followed.
That is correct. Anybody that uses our facilities. So when we open up next year, and we'll allow recreation to come into our building, whatever we require as part of our COVID policy for use of buildings, they have to adhere to. So this is accurate. I mean, that's the same thing. It's a requirement that they have. This is really not applicable because it's during school hours and the building closes at 11 p.m. We're not going to be having services at 10 o'clock at night. And they can't use the kitchen. That's across the board for everybody without the kitchen staff, which they wouldn't anyways. Refreshments or they would meet this. That's part of our wellness policy. They can only utilize the areas of the building that they're assigned to unless they have specific permission to use other areas. And basically, we're assigning them a space. That's clear in our contract with them. They have to follow all the health and safety fire guidelines that are there, which we're required to do. So if we see something, we would change it because we have to. But they're required to follow that. That's not an issue.
Phil, a question about the last one, about using other spaces. Once in a while, a counselor might take a child outside with a basketball. You know, I don't know if they'll do any of that type of thing, but maybe if this is our regulation, then maybe it's good to make them aware of that. Just
So there's three layers of what I'm going to say, three layers of policy. There's a layer of policy that the board approves.
Mhm.
There's a layer of regulation, which comes out of my office. And then there's a layer that comes out of our handbooks. That's still policy. It's still a requirement. It's just a building level policy.
Mhm.
Our building level policy requires people to sign out spaces at both buildings. If you want to use a conference room, you have to sign that space out. This doesn't, they would fall under the same expectation. If there's a recess going on and they said, well, we want to use the basketball court during that time, if there's a recess, they can't. And if there's no recess or there's no one in the conference room, they would be allowed, just like anyone else, to
Mhm.
utilize those spaces. And the office is the one that scheduled those spaces, and it's for PPTs, it's for lunch groups, it's for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so that's just part of our handbook, what I'm going to call handbook policy
Okay.
of how people sign out spaces.
Okay.
Number 5,
What about 5?
I think you probably answered it already, but on regular school days, all activities must end 30 minutes prior to the building closing. Where this is a special group, would they have, under our regulations and policy, would they have the possibility of operating? And I assume they would want to, if it might be more convenient to have a session with a student after the school is really closed down. In other words, there'll be an 8 to 5 type of operation.
So the person they hire works 40 hours a week. And so they're assigned their hours, and their primary hours are our school hours. That's when they're servicing students. They may, within those 40 hours, they meet with someone after school. They may meet with a family with a student directly after school, but CHC would have to pay this person to work at 7 o'clock at night. Or if there was an emergency and we had requested this person to come in, we would have to pay them because that's not part of the grant or the agreement. So they're not going to work. They're going to work their hours within our school day, whether it's at hall or center.
Now, as far as the supervision of the student, I mean, the school is closed, no staff is there, administration may have left. You have the health service person there, but the student, what supervision do we have over that student? Are we protecting them? I mean, they're really alone. They may not be with their parent. Parent may be picking them up at a later date. What kind of supervision do we have and protection and safety attributes do we have in control and providing for at that time?
Are you thinking summer, Herb?
Well, it could be summer, it could be a regular school day, but everything is closed down and they're there for a session, say an hour after school is closed in that area.
So that person, that clinician is responsible, just like any other clinician would be at a private agency in the community. That clinician is responsible during that time for that child. But obviously we have in here that and the parent has to agree to that. If they're going to drop them off, the parent has to agree for them to be able to see that person. They're signing off to allow that to happen, but they can't leave until that child has been picked up. But again, the majority of the service is provided during the school day when other people are around. But even still, the clinician operates under, the supervision of us, our administrators, and CHC.
So do we have in the contract with them a part which describes the situations which Herb just now was talking about during after school hours or during summer school? Do we have it somewhere in the contract where it's clearly stated?
So I'd have to go back to the contract about those with that specifically in mind. It's just basically says what the professional expectations that they have to operate by, and they operate by their national association for behavioral clinicians is how they operate. I'm just writing that down.
Okay, so you're still working on that contract. So the contract is not finished yet, yes?
No, it's not finished yet.
And we all will have plenty of time to review it, not like the night before the meeting?
No, you'll get this for your July meeting.
And we will have a few days to review it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.
On number 12, activities that are disruptive to the school environment. It's probably not disruptive, is not the term for it, but these students, in order to be serviced during the school day, will have to be removed from classes. And my experience is that if it's a study hall that a student has, and they pull them out of the study hall and go for a session with the behavioral health service agent, that's fine. If they're pulled out of an English class or a math class or history class or some of our basic classes, that to me is a little stretch, and it interferes with the education that we're trying to provide students. And I know they have to service some of our students. I don't know how many of our students are going to sign up. Most kids I run in contact with are pretty healthy and haven't been affected by the pandemic, but apparently all the surveys indicate that we have a lot of kids that have difficulty. So that these agents of the behavioral health service, they're going to pull kids. And if they in other words, if they pull a student out of a math class 2 days a week for a month or two, to me, that's kind of a stretch. I mean, it's interfering with the educational process. I know this has been discussed before, and you have the answer for it.
Yep.
But it is a concern, I think. I mean, where we have this group coming in, and they're going to provide services, we still have to look out for the interests of these students as this group operates within the school. And my experience in education, and I taught for a long time, and I had kids pulled out of class, and I was hoping that they wouldn't pull them out twice a week or too often.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've kind of addressed this before, and I'm looking out for the students' benefit. They're going to benefit from hopefully from the behavioral service, but also I don't want them to miss a class in math where they may be taking up something new, and they're not there.
Yeah. And
this has an impact. I can remember missing a couple of classes on the multiplication table, and even today I have difficulty with 7 times 8 or whatever, you know.
right. We're still required to provide, you know, a great education to our students. And so just like if we had a student in intervention that was academically based, and they were not getting enough service during their intervention block, we would look to see when we could pull them out again. And we talk to the families when we do that. And that's no different. So some students that need additional support don't take a foreign language because the family has said, look, I'd rather them get the additional services they need in reading at this time than participate in a Spanish class. And so this is no different. And we would work with them on the scheduling. You know, if you have a student that's struggling in reading, we're going to say you should not be pulling those students out during reading. And, you know, they're excelling in math. Let's mix it up. Let's get them out of a math class. But there's other blocks in the schedules of both buildings where they can pull them out where they're not missing any instruction. So it could be a recess block. It could be a lunch group where the student's eating lunch with the clinician. It could be during an intervention block. It depends on the student, and they'll schedule those times in collaboration with us.
With collaboration with parents too?
Oh yeah, definitely. So it's kind of a combination of all together with the parent weighs in on it. We're not going to pull them out of something where the parent doesn't want them pulled out of. And that's how we run our intervention blocks too. You know, if we're going to pull someone out of something, and we are always talking to parents to say, hey, listen, they need extra time, and here's where we think it would be the best time. What are your thoughts? And so that's part of our ongoing communication with families, but it's also we have the same expectation of special ed staff, of interventionists, and they have meetings around this. Just when are we going to pull that student? And they talk to the general education teacher. The principal will be part of that conversation. Sometimes it's a special education teacher part of that conversation. So it's a whole group that helps make that decision together.
And it is going to be in the contract in some way, saying that it should not be in any way harmful to children's primarily educational purpose of being in school.
I mean, I'll look to see what's in there, but you're not going to put every single detail on. Marcia and I have already talked about, we have a really generic draft of a handbook that we're doing. And I'm saying handbook, it's really only a page or two. Right now it's a page, but it's just about, it's really notification for CHC, for families, for the clinician, for our staff, so they know the process. Number one, what's the process for a student to be able to see a clinician? Our staff needs to know that. They can't just go in and a student goes in. That's not going to happen. And that's why we document those things. This is the same thing. When can it's like an FAQ, a frequently asked questions document. When can a student be pulled out? That's in that document. It's not necessarily in their contract, but they still have to follow what we're at. You know, when they want to pull out a kid, they don't just because they live in our school and they're a separate agency, they don't just get to pull a student when they want. I think 14, 13, 14, 15.
We took up 17, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if you want a statement just like this in there, I think it would be, make it clear.
I have a question on the fees too, which is,
Phil, I
Yeah,
might move that statement to the end of the paragraph. Thank you.
yellow, yep. Herbie, you were gonna ask a question?
yeah, under fees,
Yep.
section C, fees.
Yep.
A lot of groups, we don't charge fees, I guess, to a good many of them. Where it says a local
We don't charge anybody.
nonprofit organization meetings. This is not a local organization. This is a state. It's a big operation. They have buildings all over the place. So it's not a local nonprofit. The school-based health service, we're not charging no fee or anything like that. There's no money involved, you know, but as a board member and looking at it, they're taking up space. We provide custodial services, electrical things, cell phones,
Correct.
I don't know about air conditioners, services of our principal, services of our superintendent. So
Sure.
this
Mhm.
isn't free by a long shot. You know, it's a good service, you know, from some people's point of view, and certainly is going to benefit the youngsters, but it's nonprofit, and we're not charging them anything, but it does cost us some money, and I haven't figured out how much it is because it's kind of hidden costs, and we've told them it, which is a pretty good deal for them. So on 5, should we include school-based health service in there specifically in regard to this?
We could, go ahead, Ann.
You could even add a number 6 and give it its own number. And that kind of separates it from the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, you know?
Yeah. Ann always wants to add things on.
You could, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. You could add a number 6, and that's kind of what I did on my draft, my paper copy. Or, I mean, this is clearly in their contract. It says in their contract what we are providing and what they are providing. It's documented in their contract. So, I mean, we could put in here, and you don't even have to say CHC. You could just say, you know, following users sanctioned by the Board of Ed shall not be charged a fee, and just add in there, simply say school-based, you know, number 6, and say, whoops.
I think it's good too to align the regulations with the contract so that you know, down the road a couple of years, if something comes up and there's some question about something, we have the same thing in the regulations that we have in the contract.
I mean, that's how I wrote it in mine. I literally just wrote, I mean, school-based health kind of right there. I mean, that's what I wrote. So, I mean, that was, and it's basically, like you just said, Ann, all I'm doing is restating what's in their contract.
Mm.
Yeah. It says things about youth services and rec departments and YMCA and things, but they don't have any more than that.
Now, Phil, will this group, we're providing an office for them for counseling and things of that kind. On occasion, would they, as a result of their counseling, say take a youngster to the library or to the gym or to the cafeteria or some other area within the building?
Sure. Yes. If the space is open and it's appropriate for them to do that, they could do that. If they're providing private services, meaning they're having a private conversation, they're not going to do that in the gym or in a space where other students can hear or see.
And we're not going to charge them a fee if they use the cafeteria or the gym or
No.
anything like that.
No, and the way I look at this, Herb, is, I mean, they're probably providing an $80,000 service. So you say there are hidden charges, and I agree there are fees that, you know, we have to pay a phone fee, which we're already paying. We're giving them the line now. We have to pay the electricity. We'd have to do that anyways for that space. But we're getting an $80,000 between, you know, what we would pay in benefits and salary. We're getting for nothing.
You know, well, I wouldn't say that. Our parents are, the students are paying maybe $80,000 or $100 for the service, you know, overall. So money, nothing is free under these services. I mean, when you provide services, it does cost, and there's money involved. But
My point though, Herb, is if you added this position to the board budget, you'd be adding $80,000. That's my point.
Right. Well, I appreciate the work you've done on this, Phil. This is the board handles policies, and we have approved the policy, and these are regulations. And as a courtesy, you've allowed us to, because normally you set the regulations and determine the regulations. And
yeah, I think this is one of those situations, Herb, because I recognize that this is for some of the members, this has been a little sensitive topic, and I appreciate that. And so I want to make sure what we put in regs provides the safety net that people feel need to be in place for this agency. And so I think those two things are big. And you'll be able to see, obviously, our kind of, I'm getting a wicked echo, sorry. Our handbook, you know, the kind of 1 or 2 page document. And I'll get some of those answers that you asked for, you know, the proof of the nonprofit. The handbook will have the summer procedures in it, and, you know, talk about professional expectations and the pullouts. So, you know, I think that we'll be able to make sure that those things are documented. And obviously you're going to see the contract as well. Are any of you in that contract group? I think it was in the negotiations group that did it.
I think I am.
Or was it policy? Did we do it through policy, Herb? I can't remember. No, it wasn't policy. Can't be.
No, I haven't seen it, so I'm not involved.
It must be negotiations is what we did it through, because it was a contract. So you'll see that, and actually you'll probably see it sooner than later, because we just got it this week.
I think we did it through the finance committee, Phil.
Oh, you're right. That's what it was. It was finance.
Because we said that there may be some money involved.
Right.
Because it was free, it went through the finance
That's
committee.
sure not.
I think we did it through finance because we were saying that's the group that typically does those contracts, where negotiations just does like WEA admin, you know, those types of contracts. So anything else as far as the regs go that you would want to see an adjustment made? And obviously, you know, you'll see this side by side when you see the contract too, and that might help you. I wish I had that earlier. It would have helped you, I think. Anything else in this one?
I don't have any that I want to bring up at this time.
Okay. Stop this. Documents here. Save. Oops, all right, where are we? Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up the other document here. Okay, and I'm gonna share my screen. So this is the second item in the agenda.
This is the
Was the-
Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Correct. So this is the curriculum committee's taken a look at this already. And I thought that because this ends up going into policy, it would also be important for this group to look at it. So the director, there's a job description for our principals, our pupil services, and for, I think there's one for me as well, that's posted as policy in our Board of Ed on the list of policies. So basically what this would do is would create a policy with this specific job description. And I just want to confirm, you can see my screen, what I'm sharing? Okay. So what I did, and this is what I shared with the curriculum committee, sorry, Ann, you can weigh in on this.
Oh,
You've heard this already, is we took the specific wants and needs that this position would fulfill and wrote a job description around it, utilizing other job descriptions that were already developed. Other districts had them. I pulled these items in. And so this is what the job description status is in right now. So it's just basically the description of what they're going to do, what they oversee, their list of qualifications, and an 092 means it's just a state administrator's endorsement. They've got to have some successful teaching experience specifically in our grade range. Examples of collaboration and curriculum development in some other form. And then, this really says board, but I can say, oh, that's a good experience, and I can adjust that. And so then we just listed what things they would be doing, and this is broken down the same exact way as the other admins. There's an admin section, and then we put a curriculum instruction section in, and a personnel section. And then you can see that just budget and financial controls, community relations, and personal development and knowledge. So do you want me to go through each of these? Do you want me to just leave it on screen? Do you want to ask about any? What would you like to do?
This is on the Director of Curriculum.
Correct.
This is a new position, right?
Yeah, this is that 3-year grant funded position.
Grant money, yeah. And the salary is around 100,000 or 120,000.
Yeah, that's in the admin MOU.
What are our chances of getting someone that's qualified in this area? I know that around the state, they're hiring a director of curriculum and instruction in a lot of towns and so forth.
Yeah,
And they're using it for specific purposes.
yeah, I don't think we're the only ones looking to use ESSER 3 funds for this specific purpose. I don't know that other people are doing it and saying that, hey, it's only a 3-year limited position. That could hurt us. But I think we don't know until we find out. I think you post it, and once you approve this piece and it's posted, it's going to be clear to say this is a 3-year specific time range position, and we'll see who applies. It may limit our pool. It may help our pool. I don't know.
Is it a new position? We never had it before.
That's correct.
Are we required to hire to have this position?
No,
Then-
this is, and you can speak to this, Elena.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about is just because we don't have anybody in district. We had people in district years ago for math and language arts that were doing this, and they eliminated the jobs, and the curriculum has not been rewritten, revised, and this is critical. We were trying to identify avenues that we could get this done, and we are being very creative without spending a lot of additional funds. And then this big chunk of money came in, and because this is grant funded, and this is what I told the curriculum group, is that this, if we didn't have the ESSER 3 funds, I wouldn't propose this. And I'm going to say publicly over and over and over, this is a time limited position. We cannot afford this position beyond 3 years. And the only reason we can't afford it right now is because we have the grant. And the MOU with the admin, which I think went out with the agenda for Tuesday night, says it's time limited. And so this grant is time limited as well. The money runs out. You can't spend it beyond a certain point. So yes, it's a new position.
Yeah. And Elena, when the curriculum council met, there's 2 people on staff who at this point are charged with writing the curriculum, and that would be the language arts consultant who's also in charge of all the testing, changing, training teachers, making sure that they have everything they need. So that's really a full-time job. And then you put this on it. The math person is teaching 7th grade full-time and has a little bit of an extra stipend to do curriculum. And when they brought us their sample lessons, they're wonderful. They're very intricate. They're very involved. They have enrichment. They have what children that need special help should do. It cites the lesson in a couple different books. So they have, things that they can use. And it became really evident to us that it was just really impossible for these 2 people to do this. And so that's when Phil came up with the idea. And this person will work with those 2 people closely and with all the classroom teachers. And I think the curriculum is very much out there and being used. It's just not written down, and it's just not on the website. And I think that's the goal, to get it in a tangible form that a new teacher can take it the day they're hired and know what to do.
Our current review process would take us, no joke, probably to 2040. The year 2040 doesn't sound like a real year to me, but I mean, that's where the pace we're on right now. The people that we're paying an $800 stipend to, when your average $35 an hour contractually doesn't buy you a lot of time. And this person would be responsible for all of our curriculum, every content area, K through 8, within 3 years to be approved by the Board of Ed. And there would be a schedule laid out from that point on for our administrators to follow the review process to have the board approve any reviews, because curriculum's never really done, but it's in a format that someone new, like Ann said, could pick it up and go.
Phil, as part of their qualifications and responsibilities, they have to have quite a bit of experience in this area, I think. They have to have 5 years of classroom teaching, experience overseeing curriculum development, and things of that kind. Under curriculum and instruction, number three applies research and data to improve the content, sequence, and outcomes of the teaching learning process. Applies research and data to improve the content. Are they going to change our curriculum and revamp it? There are some things, for example, I know in some towns they're revamping their curriculum and the content. And there are some concerns on my part on how they're doing it and what they're including in that, like having a traditional content in math or social studies especially, and they're including some of these modern ideas and concepts. We get this every 10 years. Something new comes up and they push and put it into the curriculum. And is that going to happen here with this director, Or are they going to just take what we have to some extent, put it together so we have modernized and develop our sequence and help our teachers in the outcomes of the teaching learning process for students? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of both, Herb. So they're not, whoever's hired, and I said this to the curriculum committee, Kristen and Erica have done a ton of curriculum work. We're not throwing out what they've done. They're going to keep that process going. And there's been a lot of science curriculum and social studies curriculum work too that's done. And so we're not throwing any of that out. They're going to be responsible to make sure it's in a format that's complete, that someone can take it and follow it, that the board can review and approve. And they need to make sure that, I mean, we're Common Core. We have to follow Common Core. They have to make sure that we're following Common Core standards, and that for each standard, what we have in our curriculum meets that standard. The board has been talking recently about, learning outcomes and our data, and we were all disappointed with what iReady looked like last time I presented it. We need to approve curriculum so that we know people are following our curriculum with fidelity, the way it's intended to be applied. Right now, there's a lot of autonomy, which is not a bad thing, because you want to base it on the group of kids that you have. But we need a curriculum for people to follow that's clear and written down and documented, and everybody can see where you're at in the scope and sequence. But they're also going to have to take, up to whatever is required for current events and legislation that's approved to be in our curriculum. And so the new science standards, NGSS, newer, I should say, the new social studies standards, newer again, where it changed what you were teaching when. So now our elementary students are really learning just about the Willington area. And then as they get older, it goes towards the Connecticut, and then it goes to New England and nationally and beyond. So those are all things that need to be in our curriculum and clear. And so a third grade teacher knows what's taught in sixth grade, and the content builds on each other throughout. So we know what students are leaving us with, but they have to meet the Common Core. They have to meet the national standards for science. They have to meet the Connecticut standards for social studies. They have to do all of those things.
The curriculum is the two teachers, when we had them come in before the board, they did an excellent job on that. And it was kind of a massive job to do that, along with teaching and everything else that they have to do. So.
And Herb, remember the lessons they showed us? Do you remember the lessons? And that was like one class in one school for like one lesson. So imagine what the curriculum is going to look like when you pull together what's going on at every grade level, in every subject area.
This is one of the sorry, go ahead.
A director coming in like this, we don't know who it is or what their background is or what their thinking is, and to improve the content is one area that I'd be interested in. I mean, we have the content as you outlined, Phil, the different things we want in there. We have these state standards and things of that kind.
Yeah, I think that and this is just maybe it's my personal belief. I've watched this district for years now struggle with really concrete improvement, academic improvement. We've been pretty flat for a number of years. We've done some professional development, but it's been hodgepodge. And I think that if we can get the curriculum in a format where there's some consistency, people are following it, they know what the specific resources are, they don't have to go out and find their own, then it's easier to pinpoint any deficiencies, any areas where our concerns are, and it's also easier to extend. students that are high flyers to keep them going. And so, you know, this is something that I really, and this is why the curriculum committees met a ton, because they've heard from me, this is important. And again, I would never propose this
Yeah,
if the funds weren't there.
yeah.
But I think we have an opportunity to do something that we never would have been able to do without the $570,000.
I agree. The curriculum and instruction is a key, really. And being together like this may improve the quality of what we're providing, the education we're providing our students, and it may help them as far as when we test them, we'll find out that they're doing a lot better than, as you say, just hitting a flat area and not improving. There's always room for improvement.
And that's what we're looking to do.
And if I can say one thing, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. I taught first grade for 15 years. I have a grandson who's in first grade. I am so impressed with the way they have touched on every single reading skill. Like yesterday was UR, IR, and ER. The day before was soft G and hard G, soft C and hard C. The curriculum is there.
Yep.
It's, you know, and it can always be improved, but it's there and it's good. It just needs to get down into a format where it can be shared.
Yep.
Yeah, and the way the concepts are there, what you have to teach is there, and how you do it really is something else again. You know, as a teacher, you can modify and do what you're saying, and but also the way you present it and makes a big difference too sometimes.
Correct.
Gives the teacher some freedom.
Yeah, and hopefully, and that's the intent of this job description is, you know, it's specific enough that we know what we want this person to do, but it's also general enough so that, you know, they can spend their time where they need to spend their time. But there's a big picture here. We have a big picture of what we want to accomplish in 3 years. I mean, this is going to be tied, you know, when we talk about a retreat and we talk about student data, I'm tying it to this position. I mean, I'm going to say, look, this is critical. The work that this person is going to do is critical to the success of our students over the next 5 years. And that's why the job description is so important.
This is for 2 or 3 years, Phil.
So it's in for 3 years right now, because the funding can only be extended to a certain date. And so this would be 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. We couldn't afford, I don't think you could, number one, by the date, although it's still not clear the funding expectations, when you have to either, whether if it encumbered is enough, but I think a 3-year time commitment is fair. When this is your full-time job and you're an administrator doing this work, I think a 3-year commitment is fair.
So right now, the curriculum, except for the 2 teachers that have put it together, their own together, some of it together, we don't have too much, do we? I have a folder with curriculum in it, but I don't know whether it's the curriculum being used today or not. You know, and if I go to the website, for example, I don't know if I can find it. You know, I don't think there's anything there, because I've searched all over the place.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything.
And what is written in print?
It's quite strange. I mean, we talk about curriculum and you know how important it is and everything else. And when you go to a website, we don't have them. And I have some printed copies that are probably 10 years old.
Yep, and that's why it needs to be done. I think what's in print right now, Herb, was kind of a generic transition when we went to Common Core. And like Ann said, there's a lot of work that's been done. It's never been through the board. It needs to come to the board level for approval. And we need to make sure there's a scope and sequence that, you know, what we've identified, it doesn't go up and down or repeat skills where it doesn't need to be, have repeat skills. You know, we're using some of the Readers Writers Workshop, but it's missing some of the phonological awareness pieces. There's gaps in it. So we've plugged those holes with another program. Those are things that are out there that we're following, but they're not it's not reflective of what's been approved for curriculum. And that's the end goal of this, is let's approve what we're actually doing, and keep revising as we go to get better and make sure what's documented. So you can see it on the website. Because right now, all you're going to see on, you know, is Common Core ELA standard 1.3 is this. And there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you, as a policy committee, would want? And this, again, I could pull up if you want to see the other ones, the admin ones, the principal, and pupil services director. They're very similar from the standpoint of layout, but this is kind of gives you the picture of what that person would be doing. Up to you all.
You know, Phil, now that you said before how you're tying this to test results, at first, when I first saw this, I kind of questioned the being in charge of all the testing, but that is really excellent in terms of, you know, having a hand on the pulse of testing.
It's the reason why, Ann, because
Yeah,
if you don't know what's in SBAC,
yeah.
it's very hard to tie it into your curriculum. The types
Mhm.
of questions being asked in SBAC, or the types of questions that are not being asked, the types of assessments students being asked to do in social studies or science. Those are things that we need to make sure that this person has extensive knowledge on.
Mhm.
And even if they don't yet, if they're put in charge of testing, boy, you learn quick.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the reason why.
Yeah, that's good.
Anything else?
Yeah, on A2, just on terminology, assist in the review and implementation of the district intervention model. Can you just briefly?
Absolutely. So we have, Marcia McGinley has been working to revamp it's SRBI, scientifically research-based interventions. We have a model where it's students are tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. Tier 3 students are receiving the highest level of intervention, whether it's for reading, math, whatever it is. Could be behavior too. And so this person has a hand in that because they're going to know what the curriculum is and where a student's areas of weakness are. And so they need to help revise that document and make sure it's clear, along with our pupil services director. Because again, our pupil services director is the one that, you know, when she sits in special education parent planning, you know, planning and placement team meetings, she needs to know that that process went well, and that's, you know, students have been through our curriculum. So that's what that is. It's all about our intervention work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Herb, when I was still teaching, when you did a post assessment for a child, if they scored below an 80%, then they were supposed to receive a little bit of intervention on whatever that was. Right, so that you're, as you're seeing a deficit, you're fixing it immediately, you know.
Yeah, and now we're identified by skill.
What
So
grade?
there's could be all grades now, Herb.
Yeah, mine
Oh.
was first, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Anything you want me to highlight? I just need to see a space there. I don't like. Elena, Herb, Ann,
No,
anything
I think
else?
you've covered all my questions very nicely. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, you'll see this, I think this is on the agenda again for Tuesday night. But I think you're the second group that's seen this now, so I think between the curriculum group and them reviewing and knowing what they're looking for to move forward on this, and then now from a policy perspective, you can see this, and this would go to the board on Tuesday night, and you could choose to whether adopt it Tuesday night or go in with a first reading of it. I would ask, if you do a first reading of it, I want to move on this because I want to post it, that, you know, we know that the position is coming.
When would the position begin, Phil?
Well, I didn't, I've written it into the grant, and, but, you know, I wanted to make sure the board agrees with what's in the job description. And, you know, and you have to agree to the admin MOU that says this is a 3-year position, because then I feel confident putting it out an ad and saying it's funded by a grant. It's a temporary position. It's only 3 years. It won't go beyond that. Because I like to be transparent with people. I don't want someone applying going, oh, I wish I thought I was going to spend 10 years in this district. I'm not putting that in an ad, because as an administrator, I would be disappointed to find that out. It's going to be very explicit in the ad, and we'll pull some of the items from this job description as we write the ad to say, here's what we're looking to do.
And then
So I would post that. Sorry, I didn't finish the answer. I would post it, you know, if the board is in good shape and you approve the MOU for the admin on Tuesday night and you're okay with the job description on Tuesday night, then I could probably post this as soon as Wednesday. You know, I would say that if I could put someone in place by, you know, the middle of July,
okay.
that would be fantastic, because the money's there for it. It's really July 1 funds. You know, is how I kind of put a price tag on this position.
So then it would go till June 30th of 2024, or?
Correct.
Okay.
And some of that depends on funding. So if we, you know, I could extend it through August 30th, depending on how much money is left in the grant or not left. But I will, you know, I will manage that piece.
Very good. Thank you.
Because our factor, and we factor in insurance, if some, you know, in our total cost. If they don't take insurance and they take the waiver, and there's a $16,000 difference, I could then say, hey, I will allow this, again, working within the parameters of the grants, I can allow an extra 6 weeks of work, because, you know, it's paid for by the grant. So,
okay, thank you.
Yep.
And the Wellington Board of Education is in agreement according to the memorandum of agreement.
That will be Tuesday night. You'll have to do that Tuesday night. Oh, you mean the admin team?
Yeah.
Yes, they have, I wrote that MOU and ran it by them, and we've had meetings just to talk about that specifically. And they're in 100% support of it as well. And the MOU coming to you would be approved by them as well. They'll sign it.
Right, and that's on the agenda for our next meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else? All right, that is our agenda for the day then. 2:16 p.m.
Very good. Hey, bye, everyone. See you Tuesday night.
2:16. Yep, see you on Tuesday night. Thanks so much.
Do we have any executive meetings or no next week?
At the end.
At the end? So we
At
don't
the-
have to come earlier. So we come by 7 p.m. on Tuesday.
Correct. Well, unless you guys book something else that I don't know about, but my evaluation is at the end of the regular meeting. Executive sessions at the end of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Have a
welcome.
great day, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye, Elena. Bye, Herb. Bye, Phil.
Okay, see you.